Okay. Um, so I figured before we get started, we'll just go around and give introductions, names, if you have any familiarity with Girl by Moonlight or other Forged in the Dark games, pronouns too. My name's Danny. I go by he, him. I have played a few Forged in the Dark games, but I have not played Girl by Moonlight yet. Who would like to go next?
I can. Hi, folks. I am David. He, him pronouns. I've played a little bit of Fortune in the Dark, run a even smaller amount of Fortune in the Dark, and this is my first time with Girl by Moonlight, so looking forward to it.
Hi, folks. I'm Will, pronouns he, him, playing from Los Angeles. I played in a face-to-face season of Blades in the Dark, and I've played in, I think, a 3 or 4 shot on of Girl by Moonlight on Open Hearth. But this would be my second game of Girl by Moonlight.
Nice. What playset did you play on with the
We
four-shot?
played on In a Maze of Dreams. I think the Paprika and the paprika focused serial experiments lane focused one.
Nice.
And I played a non-human stranger.
Cool. Um, Fumi or Clarisse, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I can go next. I'm Fumi. I go by any pronouns. Most people default to she, her with me. That's fine. I have a little bit of experience with Forged in the Dark, although not extensively. I've looked into Girl by Moonlight from its alpha play test, but haven't really. It's like this would be my first time actually playing it.
My name's Clarice. I've no real experience with Forge in the Dark or Girls by Moonlight, but I do like what I've seen and read on Girls by Moonlight. But yeah, experience is pretty much non-existent on this one.
Did you say your pronouns? I didn't catch that.
Oh, she, her.
Okay, excellent. Cool. As we're going, if anybody has any questions about any of the rules, mechanics, or anything like that, by all means, feel free to stop me and we'll go through it, no problem. So this is a game with the Open Hearth, which is an online community of people from all over the world who play indie games, OSR games, story games, trad games, hacks, drifts, playtests, etc. We'll be playing for about 3 hours or so tonight, and we'll stop for 5 to 10 minute breaks on the hour. We'll play that by ear and based on how everybody's feeling. We can always take more breaks if needed. That's no problem. The safety tools that we have. So if you have the character keeper open, we have a safety tab. So we have lines and veils, the open door policy, X card, cats, and the romance matrix. So lines and veils, lines will be things that aren't part of the world or game, and veils are things that might be part of the world, but they'll happen off screen or without any detail. Very brief. So by all means, feel free to go ahead and add anything that you would like there for us to keep in mind and to steer clear of or to be aware of. I've already added one. The open door policy is any player may leave for any period of time and return as they are able, no questions asked. If you do feel like you need to leave for whatever reason, it's nice to get a heads up so we know whether or not you're returning, but that's not necessary by any stretch of the imagination. Always take care of yourself first, it's no problem. The X card is any player may request content to be excised from play. Just reach out in any way you are able to communicate, by voice, by chat here in the Zoom call, whatever you feel you're capable of. I'll do my best to keep an eye on the chat. If I miss something, please bring that to my awareness. CATS. So CATS stands for concept, aim, tone, and subject matter. So these are kind of, since it sounds like everybody's pretty familiar with Girl by Moonlight, but I'll go through them anyway. Concept is a Forge in the Dark game about magical girls fighting back mundane and supernatural forces of oppression. The aim of play is to explore the struggles, identities, and relationships of this group of magical girls as they contend with their obligations within society and the forces arrayed against them. Our tone, the specific tone is really dependent on the playset, and then also, how we can adjust it to our own personal tastes as a group. For At the Brink of the Abyss specifically, it aims for themes of heroism and redemption. The touchstones it lists in the book are Sailor Moon and Steven Universe, for example. And we, like I said, we can change that a little darker, a little lighter, whatever we feel like doing with that. And that's largely what we'll be doing today, I think, or a big part of it anyway. Subject matter. These are just a few things. At the Brink of the Abyss does aim for pretty light stuff, but these are the things that I could think of to bring to people's awareness just in case. These include corruption/redemption cycles, melodrama, oppression and ostracism, especially from figures of authority or figures in power, and then young adult violence. The romance matrix is an opportunity to specify whether you in particular are interested in exploring any potential relationships your character may have in the setting. School crushes, that sort of thing. Does anybody have any questions?
Nope, none so far.
Okay. I'll like to give it a minute or two for us to fill out the lines and veils.
Don't mind me, I'm frantically downloading a unclaimed PDF of Girl by Moonlight that I can reference.
No worries. I have listed quite a few of the rules for reference under the Clocks and Rules tab, but they aren't necessarily the exact language, so that will probably do you well either way. All right. So it seems like everybody's comfortable with ready to move on. I'll wait a minute while we finish filling out the romance matrix. Okay. So just real quick, I feel like it might probably be helpful just to go through a little tour of the character keeper, just so we're all aware of where everything is. So we have a safety tab, a series tab, playbooks, clocks and rules, and the director tab. So we've already kind of gone through here the safety tab. The series tab is kind of the collective identity of the group, as well as like the theme of the series. So kind of like Will was saying earlier, one of the other play sets deals more with like dream travel and stuff like that. In this particular case, our play set is At the Brink of the Abyss. So we'll be working, I think, mostly in this tab and the playbooks tab today to answer the questions for the series, to build out our setting, to build out our world. And then the playbook section, next tab over, is all the different playbooks for the individual characters. So later on, when we go, as we kind of come towards the end of filling out the series will be directed to head on over to the playbooks, make some choices, go back to the series, and then come back to the playbooks at the end and finish up character creation there. Clocks and Rules tab is just kind of a general quick reference for a lot of the rules for just for easy recall, so that I can pull them up, you can pull them up, we can refer to them into the text together. For those of you who aren't familiar with Blades in the Dark or Forge in the Dark games, they have a clock mechanic that's pretty flexible. It's a good way of measuring things that are happening, prolonged events that are happening in the fiction that the characters are building up to. So maybe there's a big fight and it's a 4 clock. So we got to make progress on that clock before we can defeat the enemy. Or maybe there is the enemy doing something and the clock ticks up as a consequence for your actions when you roll poorly. And when that clock fills, then some big awful event will happen, and we'll see what that looks like on screen. And then the director tab is the sheet, basically the information that the book gives me as the director to work with and to help focus At the Brink of the Abyss specifically, to make sure, I have support to try to aim for the tones that the game would like us to for At the Brink of the Abyss. Does anybody have any questions? Cool. All right. So next on my list of things for our session 1 is to start with the series. So on the series tab, if you scroll down a little bit, there's an area where it says series name. And then under that is the Abyss and its agenda. So our job now is to collectively just kind of go through these different questions, these different prompts, come up with answers, and talk about them and think about what appeals to us, what's interesting to us, and to flesh out the world that way. And if we get stuck, we can always move on and then come back. Maybe a later question will provide us with inspiration. So the first thing it asks of us is what lies in the abyss? Sort of what is the abyss and its agenda? And you can click on that and see the different options it gives us. That's stuff that we can work from or riff off of, depending on what appeals to everybody.
And the Abyss is basically the antagonist, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So is this kind of where we can all just kind of engage in a freewheeling discussion about what sounds cool and what it might look like? Is this kind of where players step in and just sort of start talking amongst ourselves?
100%. Yeah, this is a conversation for all of us to contribute to. Absolutely.
So Steven Universe would be if we were playing Steven Universe the RPG, which I'm not necessarily suggesting, then the Abyss would be a grand cosmic order.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I'm not sure what Sailor Moon would be. I'm not super familiar.
Go on, sorry.
I would say if it would be helpful for anybody, I can also read some of the paragraphs it gives for series creation, if anybody feels like they're lacking direction as to what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, yeah, that might be helpful.
Sure. Yeah. So this is what it says. Start by choosing a series playset. This choice is the most significant factor in defining the content, tone, and theme of your game. Everyone at the table gets to weigh in. We've kind of all decided to start with At the Brink of the Abyss by signing up. So take the time to, let's see here. All right, once a playset has been chosen, read the lists of prompts in the series creation workspace and answer them together, starting at the top and working through them in order. Record your choices on the sheet, so as we have here. Everyone provides input here, regardless of the roles they will play during the course of the series. Try to work on a consensus basis to make sure everyone is interested in playing in the situation you are establishing. Listen to other players' input and make space for them to speak.
I am. Go on. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say I'm pretty much open to anything. I tend to gravitate towards evil mirror universes, so a twisted reflection of our reality sounds kind of entertaining, but there are several of these that appeal to me.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I'm not like a Sailor Moon person, but I keep thinking that there's definitely there's like a cracked Dark World version of this NPC who's been swapped and now Sailor Moon has to go in and save them or something like that. I keep thinking that's a thing.
Yeah, I've been kind of leaning towards the twisted reflection, and the others that like strike me as like could be fun stories is the Poison Heart of the World or the Cosmic Order, depending on how that goes. But yeah, the twisted reflection one kind of calling it to me when I look at it.
Yeah, it seems almost unanimous for a twisted reflection of our reality.
Excellent. That kind of gives me some weird, twisted Alice in Wonderland vibes almost. When we focus on the mirror and moving through it. Cool. All right, so.
Oh, it's funny because my top three are basically Clarissa's top three. So.
All right, so twisted reflection of reality sounds like what we're dealing with here. The next one is the agenda. What is the agenda of the Abyss? And that's right below that first one.
Oh, wow.
I think I'm personally leaning towards to see its emptiness reflected in others, because I feel like that kind of just lends itself pretty naturally to twisted reflections of reality. It's like, let's see. It's exact retribution. It's like might also be an interesting one. But yeah, I am curious to see what everybody else is leaning towards too.
I'm wondering about to propagate and thrive if the reflection of our reality is empty or flat or shadowed, and they want to turn the tables and be the driving force. Sort of like what if your shadow wanted to be calling the shots?
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Almost like a persona kind of thing, or a it's like link between worlds kind of thing.
Yeah, those are the three I've been looking at. All three of those are like the ones that feel like they fit kind of in the reflection kind of mindset.
To enact retribution sounds an awful lot like the plot of Us by Jordan Peele.
Was that a horror movie?
Yes.
Okay, I think I remember seeing previews for that.
I haven't I haven't actually watched it through, but I understand that there's sort of like the world above and the world below and mirror characters between them.
Yeah, that sounds right. Which I think like some of that movie in particular, there were some themes of the people from the other realm, the other world, wanting to not just seek retribution, but I think also seize control in a sense, which kind of lends nicely to your thoughts that you had on to propagate and thrive. It's just a different take on it.
And the three that we kind of so far have mentioned, if you think about it, all three can kind of almost intermingle in a way depending on how you're interpreting them.
Yeah.
Could folks just repeat the three that we're looking at, just so I have it straight in my head?
I think the three we're looking at are to see its emptiness reflected in others, to propagate and thrive, and to exact retribution.
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts on that, David?
I mean, you're right. They pretty much intermingle. I've been stuck thinking about the mirror bit and how that could come into play. I did some quick Googling, and it looks like there was some, at least a few story arcs from one of the Sailor Moon series that actually featured mirrors very heavily. There was a basically an antagonist who was looking to find someone who I think might have been trapped in a mirror so that she can then release her master from another mirror. And there was just a lot of mirror stuff going on, and people being trapped in mirrors and entering mirrors and that kind of thing. So I was a little bit absorbed in looking at that. But as far as what we have for the three options, I think you could interpret any of them to mean any of the other two. So I'm kind of okay with kicking this back to you folks to see what feels best on your end.
How do we play more with to see its emptiness reflected in others?
That's a good question.
To me, I'm getting visions of a kind of fairy tale, Snow White, evil queen, mirror stuff, draining the life force out of others until there's like no emotion left.
Well, and I'm thinking like in general, there's also the thing where there are sometimes the shadow could have that nihilism or that sense of like loss of self, and seeing somebody have self, see somebody have a sense of happiness or personage, maybe motivates them to want to corrupt or remove that from them, as it has almost an envy for how much life they have compared to it, kind of thing.
Yeah. And consider also shadows are monochromatic. So you're dealing with something that is colorless and featureless aside from gradient.
That is cool.
Yeah, you could definitely do some cool like colors versus blackness imagery. Like the good guys have a lot of prisms and like rainbows and stuff like that. And then there's, some kind of dark evil version of a prism that absorbs all of the colors and everything's black and awful now. And that's kind of the reverse prism. Sort of the yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say that feels very on brand. I was excited about what you were describing.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of a Powerpuff Girls episode way back when, actually, where everybody lost the colors and they're all like less of energy and unhappy. And those who are in the color area were like just normal and kind of enjoying themselves. So that kind of a like weird color drain kind of effect.
Like just turning the saturation dial down on people.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like we've got a lot to work with then. And since they intermingle, we can bring in different ideas if things start to get a little stale. So are we good with to see its emptiness reflected in others?
It's cool with me.
I'll just list a few of the notes that I've been taking here. So, monochromatic / realm. We can come back in and fill some of these in a little more as well. All right, so the next is the Harbingers. Who are they? What are they? Kind of helps us give a face to the abyss. The options it gives are disgraced royalty, interstellar invaders, travelers from a cursed future, a court of petty gods, saints and their attendant priests, and the forces of a peerless general.
Is there anything that sounds especially good to you there, Danny? Because you're the one who's got to portray the bad guys.
Appreciate that. They definitely all seem to like lean strongly into one concept or another. This mirror realm, people draining life. Like I was saying earlier, I was getting as you all were talking about it, visions of that kind of a fairy tale almost set up, which to me leans in towards disgraced royalty. But I'm certainly open to what other people are thinking.
Yeah, I'm personally open to any of those. So I pretty much lean with David and like whatever is like in particular sounds interesting to you who has to portray them.
Thanks.
Yeah, all of them have their own kind of like, sure, they're unique in every way, but they all have some similarities enough that to me, I'm like kind of just more of like, let's pick your flavor kind of thing.
Does anybody feel strongly against disgraced royalty?
Disgraced royalty sounds good.
Okay.
Sure.
Do we have any general thoughts on them being disgraced royalty in general? Just to add some notes here. Anything come to mind for anybody?
More than two. More than one, more than two. I was about to suggest a court of petty nobles as opposed to a court of petty gods.
I dig that.
Well, and like there could be different ways to interpret it too, of why they're disgraced. Like, oh, maybe that they were not an empty reflection at one point, but some terrible decisions that they've made in the past is what caused them to be this kind of emptiness in general, and why they're kind of disgraced. Who knows?
That makes me feel like that they're very vindictive.
To the extent to which you want romance to be involved, it's pretty common in fairy tales for it to be a thing where you have a spurned lover who wanted to marry character A, but character A ran off with character B, and now now the bad guy wants to burn the world down or something like that. So it's an idea.
Nice. Okay. Anything you would like to contribute, Fumi?
No, that all sounds good to me so far.
Cool. Okay. All right. So the next one is the mundane world. So what does the general day-to-day world of the magical girls look like? We get to choose one or two of these. I'm always keen on two when we can, because I like having something to reflect, add more detail, more ideas to draw from. The list it gives are an ancient city, authoritarian government, religious hierarchy, class struggle, a rural community, and a futuristic megacity.
There's some big genre implications in this one.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There is so as fair warning, the game does have a whole phase dedicated to your obligations that you fill within society, and somebody once described it as the harrowing part of the game, where we get to explore the awful things that you have to do to try and fit in this world, and the pains that brings you, and the stresses.
Futuristic megacity could be kind of fun, just because it makes me think of sort of like a Neo Tokyo kind of vibes. I know this doesn't necessarily have to be an anime, but there's a lot of good stuff that's been historically set in big futuristic megacities. And it could be a utopian one too. It doesn't have to necessarily be dark cyberpunk unless we want it to be. But that's just kind of one thing I'm thinking of.
Well, and the way I'm kind of so far looking at these, I'm kind of looking at like almost like you have a rural community, futuristic megacity, and agency, kind of like almost what could be like like a base kind of thing, and then like the other three can almost be like a additional modifier, like addition to that kind of base theme, if you're in a way, if we're kind of looking at possibly going with two. So like rural community with like a religious hierarchy or something like that, or for instance, a futuristic megacity with like some dystopian thing with like an authoritarian government. There's a few different ways to kind of look at this too. But honestly, I have no real preference on any of them because they all have their own unique tropes and fun ways to kind of tackle them from a player standpoint.
I do like what you said there, that a few of them feel almost like a canvas to paint on with some of the others. Like you said, a rural community, a futuristic megacity, an ancient city, definitely feel like backdrops within work like an authoritarian government, religious hierarchy, or class struggle. That resonates with me. So is anybody particularly interested in specifying some of the harrowing elements of the modern day insofar as selecting an authoritarian government, religious hierarchy, or class struggle? Or would we like to just leave that be for now and see what other things we get into, and instead just select maybe one of these or two of these backdrops just to add contrast to each other?
I think one of the things that you're likely to see in a story like this is whether it's authoritarian government, whether it's religious hierarchy, whether it's class struggle, more than likely, if we pick one of those, it's going to be used by the antagonist as a weapon against the characters at some point. So if we have authoritarian government, probably that means that the bad guys are going to stick the cops on us. If it's religious hierarchy, same thing. If it's class struggle, then someone's going to try to, buy out or gentrify or, somehow capitalistically crush something we care about. So I guess it kind of depends on what sort of things you would like to fight against, is kind of the lens I'm viewing it through.
It's interesting because I imagine most of our narrative is going to be focused on fighting the abyss. To what degree is the abyss aligned with authoritarian government, religious hierarchy, class struggle, and in what degree is it a second front? To what degree are we facing one evil or two evils?
Yeah, you can play that either way. I mean, in theory, you could have the Abyss that's also opposed to the authoritarian government, but they want to replace it with their own form of a new world order, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, and the disgraced royalty and authoritarian government could play off of each other in a unique way. And then you have like religious hierarchy. Those, I mean, with depending on how you look at the disgraced royalty, that also could play off of each other in its own way. So like the thing is with our choice of like the Harbinger, they work really nice with each of the three in their own way, where they could either clash or work alongside in some shape or form as well, if you think about it. Because I mean, royalty, that's a class struggle as is. I mean, so it was kind of, I guess the bigger question is, do we care more on a religious aspect? Do we care about dealing with bureaucracy of like the authoritarian kind of side of things, or the other thing where we're dealing with like the struggles of, I guess, being oppressed in the monetary and like status sense, I guess. And honestly, all of them have their own little like funds that I can't really personally choose because they all can be pretty unique in their own ways, depending on how I think it kind of almost feels like also what Danny might feel they are more comfortable or feel like they have some already good ideas of how to portray, I think, too, because Danny is going to naturally be the one throwing all this at us anyway.
I like the idea of the shadow of the abyss being the issues with the society turned up to 11, in that if you were to like shift the Overton window far enough, you'd get the abyss running things.
Actually, I kind of like that too.
Could you say that one more time?
The idea that if you take the problems of the society and you turn them up to 11, you get the abyss.
Oh,
And
sure.
maybe
Yeah.
if the abyss makes things bad enough, they just sort of, they shift the Overton window over on society such that the Abyss
Which
is now
fits-
running the show.
Yeah, which fits the reflection of our reality.
Yeah, I'm into it.
I like that. Yeah. So futuristic mega city, and then if we're up in the air still, we can come back to it in a few questions to see if maybe authoritarian government, religious hierarchy, or class struggle stand out.
Yeah, I think we should probably kind of see the other options and see if that kind of gears us towards one or the other.
Excellent. All right. So next is what is held to be sacred by the mundane world. So these are things that you will transgress against, or the characters are meant to transgress against. So the options it gives us is order, power, tradition, control, edifices, organizations, achievement, and privilege.
And I don't know, like one thing I find that always can be a pretty solid one to always have to deal with is tradition. I feel like, especially when it comes to magical girls, one thing that stands out is their stance on trying to fight things that oppress their individuality or prevent them from moving into a different type of future because the traditions are held so much more dear than that of going something new and more potentially better for everybody. That was my first thought, at least on out of the list.
Tradition's good. Yeah.
I think the other one I'd probably suggest is probably control. Simply, it's like given, it's like in and of itself, like rebelling against control, or more so loss of personal agency goes is typically a common theme, especially with like cyberpunk-ish leaning settings like our futuristic megacity, and also it's like tends to lend itself pretty well to fighting against disgraced royalty and things of like, not to mention people generally just don't like having their personal freedoms taken away.
Tradition and control together sound like a very ritualistic society.
Yeah.
I do like how that sounds, especially with comparison to like the disgraced royalty. Like, you will bow and you will follow the orders that we have given from on high.
Almost like a clockwork city.
Ooh, yeah. Like everything functions on time, and when it doesn't, there's hell to be paid.
Yeah, and the argument is always like, oh, control keeps things orderly. It keeps things. It's like it keeps things moving timely. It's like in organization, in line, and everything. It's like you can. It's like if everything's orderly, then it's like conflict shouldn't happen and things like and everything. It's like in the sense of like, uh, for the good of everyone else at the cost of the individual, or for the greater good at the cost of the personal good, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it fits pretty nicely with the, if you think about it, with empty reflections and a bunch of other things that we've so far talking. There's a lot of nice potentials there with just the thing of like almost the expectation to fit into this particular societal like norm, and if you break it, you're affecting the greater whole, and it's almost like this kind of huge community expectation that you don't break from that, otherwise you mess the sense of like how this cog works within this machine.
Actually, that does bring up a question for me. One of the options says edifices. Are we to take it like edifices as in like systems? Or I guess I'm trying to understand what edifices as a choice and what sacred means.
Maybe like monuments, legendary figures or mythological figures.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering because it's like edifices can mean like buildings or monuments or it's like structures and things like that. So I guess I'm trying to understand like what that means as a choice.
Yeah, you can interpret that in a few ways. Let's see, edifice. Well, I mean, dictionary definition says you could an edifice is either a building or a complex system of beliefs.
I mean, it almost feels like it overlaps with tradition,
Yeah,
sort of the
Yeah.
trappings of tradition.
feels like it emphasizes symbology. Like this is the symbol that we all adhere to, and so then I picture those that are transgressing against what's sacred. Is lots of spray paint.
Yeah.
I can see that working well with disgraced royalty, especially if like by it's like especially um if or it's like if by, for example, a stringent set of beliefs and everything, we may or may not be referencing, for example, the um government of aristocracy, where you have the elite few that is like are deemed is like worthy of holding all the power and everything of leading the people precisely because they are elite. So I can see that working well with edifices in a sense.
Yeah.
Feels like a society where parades and color guards and aesthetically beautiful displays of colors and patterns are encouraged.
Yeah, like reminiscent of, for example, royal crest, like royal crest and noble house symbols.
But not in like a self-expressive way, in a you will adhere to this sort of way.
Yeah.
You will wear your house's colors.
You are one element of the display. You are one flag. You are one flag providing hue among the multitude.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what do the rest of you? It's like where are the rest of you possibly leaning towards as far as choices?
I'm kind of leaning towards the just between the three as a whole that we've been so far discussing, because tradition, control, and now bringing in the edifices is like they all three have like a general similar thing with how they can correlate with our worlds so far, as well as our harbingers and our abyss. It kind of all kind of has their own ways of intermingling in a to create some more cohesive story.
Imagine there's going to be an awful lot of pressure trying to live up to maintaining appearances
Yeah.
or to fulfilling one's role in the rituals and trappings of society.
Yeah, and there's probably also a family kind of structure or expectation that your family fits into a certain part of this society, and should you do terribly, it not only reflects poorly on you, but it could reflect poorly on your family or anybody else that you're connected with within the society, as it's kind of viewed upon, possibly even they fail to reel you in proper within this kind of greater whole almost, because it sounds like a system that expects everybody to fulfill its part.
I think it sounds like either way, like a lot of us are leaning towards the idea that like themes of conformity or it's like traits of conformity are, it's like in particular is what's being held sacred. And I think it's probably more so just the question of which two particular traits of that are the characters going to be contesting in particular.
Um, what I'm hearing a lot of, what I'm getting is tradition and edifices.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing about that, like maybe letting go a little bit of the control, is we can kind of mirror the squabbling nobles, and maybe there's multiple houses, so it's not, society isn't strictly controlled because we have different oppositions within the mundane world.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, that works for me. Something along those lines.
That brings up the question is, does that mean that under the mundane world, we would be interested in just selecting class struggle as the second one?
That's a good one to go with, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I at least wanted to strike out religious hierarchy because it didn't feel like it was fitting quite with the family-based.
Yeah, it's like I feel like authoritarian and class struggle now are the two that make the most sense within our current setup. And class struggle, I think it falls so far the higher one on the list that fits everything so far.
We can come back and change that too if something else jumps out at us. All right, so the next question is, what is considered profane? And the options it gives us are bodies, love, emotion, gender, nature, community, friendship, and tenderness.
I feel like, generally speaking, when you're talking about anything with conformity, emotion is always a no, because that is a self-expression, that is expressing any kind of emotion, especially displeasure, with the norms is going to naturally ruffle feathers, and the fact that if you have emotion, that means you have individuality, and that's not conforming.
Yeah, all of that, plus I just want to see emotion in the game.
What if we were to throw egoism on there? Because if the society is so focused on if the society is so focused on conformity, the idea of rising above your station and drawing undue attention to yourself might be considered obscene or mortifying.
I can definitely see that, or like it's like depending on the setting, it's like that we're playing with and everything, where like rising above your station that you're born with is the goal. There is a sort of tradition or an acceptable process to it, but for those who break those processes, and kind of, at least in the, it's like from the perspective of nobles, it's like consider it cheating almost, in the sense of like old money versus new money sort of sense. It's like see that it's like being considered obscene essentially.
I feel like this society validates and holds close the idea of beauty. Like the patterns are maintained. If society is going to shift, it is going to shift in a beautiful way. And if you make it look ugly, then you're shunned.
And another thought I had with all this discussion is, we have a thing that's all about conforming. It's about helping this community. However, I would also find that as a almost ironic kind of thing, another thing that would be profane, especially to those above, is establishing a sense of community in a way that you might actually break out of the expected conformity of basically making, in a sense, a community that offshoots from the expected grouping, in a sense, where it's like, we want you to be a part of our community, but if you were to kind of develop your own kind of sense of self with others, that would be problematic, because the more that you work with others, the more it's going against the combined group's expectations.
Kind
What
of
is
like
considered-
sorry, go ahead.
Go for it.
No, I was just saying, like, are you saying kind of in a sense of like your identity must revolve around others and not for yourself, sort of thing?
It was something a bit like what is considered profane counterculture.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of going for.
Do either of you two have any thoughts or considerations, David or Danny?
Other than just liking emotion, I can kind of work with almost anything. Depending on how much inner conflict you want to have. You could also put in friendship if you want to have moral quandaries where, we are pit against people we like. That would be probably what you'd end up with that.
Yeah, considering we are part of this community that has conformed, and we have, and maybe only recently and more like times have we kind of decided that maybe we want to kind of break free from that as we see that's a problem or something. And naturally we've made friendships, we've gotten connections in this kind of sense of community that it would be kind of pitting ourselves against those who we once considered friends, who we may or may not have had a more understanding relation with. Now we don't necessarily see eye to eye anymore. So that I could see that as well, which kind of works also with that kind of counterculture of sorts in a way. And the only thing when I'm looking at these, the ones that just don't feel like they fit so far with what we've kind of discussed is bodies and nature. I'm not necessarily seeing those ones fitting into anything we've kind of so far discussed, but all the others have some shape or form that they can still fit. But those ones just kind of stand out as I'm not seeing how they would work.
I think so. I think it sounds like that we're definitely on board for motion, and so there's a big question of community versus friendship. Would it be more interesting for you all to have a community that you're kind of working with or building up behind the scenes, or are you more like isolated as your group of magical girls?
Kind of like the former. There's something illicit. There's something sort of an illicit thrill of we've already established that there's something wrong with our society, and we're trying to sort of shore things up.
I'm pretty much in between both of them. I kind of like either or, so I have no preference.
Yeah, kind of same here.
Ditto.
Okay. So if I heard right, then we'll go with emotion and community. Is that right?
That sounds right from what I'm seeing.
I can get behind that. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to clarify, David, when you said you didn't like emotion, did you mean that you were on board with emotion being considered profane, or that you wanted to select something other than emotion on the list?
No, I do want emotion to be on the list.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh no, I heard wrong.
No, you're good.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to force that on you. Excellent. Okay. So some notes about that. We said that emotions was really about self-expression and only really allowing yourself, only allowing the expressions that the houses or whoever is in control, the traditions allow, right? And then the community is, I like that community is profane, it's counterculture. So, all right, so the next part is our magical origin. The options it gives us are reincarnations of, just to be clear, this is the magical origin of the magical girl. So kind of where they're getting their power from, who they are, that sort of setup. So the options it gives are reincarnations of interstellar royalty, a magical world hidden within the mundane, a crossing of timelines, embodiments of the stars, defectors from the adversary, a heroic refutation of the abyss.
From like reading on this list and all, like with what we kind of so far discussed with all of our setting and traditions and profane and what's profane and all, ones that kind of stuck out to me like immediately as like some really fun options is definitely a magical world hidden within the mundane, considering if we're breaking from that community, we're kind of finding that hidden thing, that hidden kind of sense in our world. There's also the embodiment of stars, which just always has a fun little thing to it. And I don't know, there's also the factor of disgraced royalty. What's not to love about us being potentially reincarnations of interstellar royalty? Its own little fun thing there.
That makes it very personal.
Yes.
Right. That one clicks pretty well with what we've already got. But then again, so does the magical world within the mundane too.
I wasn't really on board with the magical world hidden within the mundane until you said that that might be the subculture or the counterculture community that we're involved in. That there's sort of a refugee world inside the world that we're attuned to.
We are at the hour. Is everybody okay to finish wrapping up this piece and then take a break, or would we want to take a break now and think about it?
I'm okay with pressing on for a little bit more.
Maybe give it like 5-10 minutes and then check in again.
Okay.
I guess my top three would be, at this point, magical worlds, embodiments of the stars, and heroic refutation of the abyss. But I'm curious to see how reincarnations of interstellar royalty would work. I don't see all the pieces moving together, but then again, that's why we're playing, right?
You could also be royalty if you were defectors from the adversary, because the defector or the adversary is royalty.
Well, and I see all four that you mentioned. Well, the three that you mentioned and this royalty, all four of them have some unique fun validity of like how it comes about, especially as characters develop and the explanation of how they all came to be like magical girls. The bigger question is, I guess, the kind of flavor almost of how we want this fitting within the world as a whole, it feels like, because I feel like all of them have their own easy way to mesh within our current setup.
We've made a society that is going to be hard to live in. I feel like that colors what our base of operations is.
And that's one reason I kind of like thought definitely the magical hidden world within the mundane and the stars kind of felt especially kind of popping, because it's almost that kind of sense of color from those ideas. Those ones kind of struck me as, oh, if we're going to go kind of on that monochrome versus color kind of thing, those two kind of almost give that imagery of color in a way.
Were you referring to the stars there?
Yeah, the stars and the hidden world and the mundane, both of those.
Yeah, come to think of it, the embodiments of the stars thing is good because you can be basically an embodiment of starlight, and you can do a lot with rainbows and light and things like that. Which goes good with the imagery we've talked about. Now, to be clear, it just has to be the origin of our powers, right? It doesn't mean we have to literally be these things. We could just be obtaining our powers from these things.
It's kind of left open to interpretation, because the step after this is to choose a role for each character. And the roles are things like royal heir, loyal knight, hopeful suitor, secret lover, demanding mentor, forgotten child, lowly servant, enemy turned friend, fledgling mystic, which luckily, because of the mundane world, it could fit into that. But I think the role is meant to emphasize your role within the magical girl group. So it seems to lean into the direction that this is a magical origin for your powers, but also speaks a little more to the characters as well.
Like if you're imbued with starlight or something. Your personality resonates with the concept of Venus.
Yeah, sort of like, yeah, like Sailor Moon and all is like the embodiment of the moon as a whole, but not like in kind of a way, and or Mars. Yeah, like the Sailor Scouts in a way, if you could look at it, I guess.
What's interesting to me is that a magical world hidden within the mundane is pitting itself against community being considered profane, because here's this world we're protecting. But reincarnations of interstellar royalty and embodiments of the stars are pitted against self-expression and egoism being considered profane, because those are very flashy, individualistic concepts that have been dropped onto people. So picking our origin, choosing one or the other of those as our origin may sort of position where the friction with society is most going to be.
So one thought that came to me regarding reincarnations of interstellar royalty specifically was that like seems like you're like a counter court to both like the royal houses or whatever they are for the mundane world, and a counter court to the harbingers as disgraced royalty, which may or may not be something that we're interested in, as in like different ruling factions fighting each other, or if the magical girls want to be something that's like a level above that.
Well, that almost sounds like we've got white and black on a chessboard and we're the pawns.
What is your thoughts there, Fumi, since you haven't really inputted on anything this yet?
Sorry, like I was mulling things since like four of the choices kind of melded together in a way where my brain just started kind of carrying on with a bunch of potential lore ideas. Basically, I am open to any of them. The longer answer is probably too long for me to elaborate on and such, but yeah. I guess it's like, yeah, it's like I'm open to any of them. My brain kind of just, I started mulling over some kind of wild ideas that I'm not too inclined to share right before break right now. So,
Maybe now would be a good time for a break. Then we can mull it over. 10 minutes sound good with everybody?
Yeah, that works.
Okay,
That sounds good.
See you in 10. Awesome. Sounds like we're all back. Magical origins. I'll check the book to see if there's maybe an area where there's additional information that might be helpful. Did you have any thoughts that you wanted to share for me?
Yeah, I can. Although it's like my thoughts right now kind of it's like currently look like uh this image right here. I don't know if it's loading.
I feel that, yeah.
But basically it's just like the thought. So basically it looks like everyone is kind of between the choices of like it's like reincarnations of interstellar royalty, the magical world hidden within the mundane, embodiment of the stars, and defectors from the adversary, I think it was. And I think like also heroic refutation of the abyss, which I'm not quite sure what to make of that one yet. But it was basically just the thought. It's like my mind started carrying on to places where essentially because aristocracy is typically determined by it's like or aristocracy is it's like typically identified as like the few who are elite or considered elite for some reason. So it's just like the thought of basically maybe some far back forgotten history at this point where it's like royalty actually was discerned royalty precisely because they had it's like because of their magical origins, which being interstellar royalty kind of ties well with the embodiment of the stars and everything. And so it's like that in and of itself also lends itself all to disgraced royalty, which carried on to a tangent of basically what if our characters or some of our characters were descended from disgraced royalty and everything, which is like, and it's like, which is part of the reason why we're fighting against tradition and edifices and everything. And possibly, it's like, and so part of the reason why we are engaged in the profane themes of emotion communities because if you're raised amongst like the stuffy traditions and it's like stringent requirements of nobility and everything, of course when you engage with a community that lets you be free and open and everything, it's like of course you're going to start engaging in like these what's considered profane taboos or whatnot and everything, which also lends itself very well to defectors from the adversary. But also it's like if the nobility essentially are it's like where it's like claims their nobility way back in like uh it's like times forgotten and everything, it's like basically naturally the non-nobility don't remember why the nobility are the nobility, but the nobility don't forget their it's like original purpose, hence the magical world hidden within the mundane futuristic megacity, which lends to like an aristocracy with a bit of like a how do you put it protective or savior complex because they are protecting it's like or they are it's like obligated to protect the common people and it's like some such noble responsibilities, although it's like also lends to the arrogance and everything. Mind you, my mind just carried away from there, so it's not like I'm necessarily like suggesting or pushing any of these ideas. This was just where my mind carried me.
So what you were saying, I think had some great tie-ins. Like, for example, I think Clarice had said that the Harbingers as disgraced royalty have became disgraced probably through some terrible decision. And if we're looking at like reincarnations of interstellar royalty, what if their terrible decision was killing off the rulers who are now reincarnated as magical girls?
Yeah, and I can definitely see that. Not to mention that sort of tangent also opens up like the some potentially interesting conflicts with basically not only it's like where your opposition is in many ways in a similar situation, or basically on the other side of the coin of like what your characters might be if they didn't have like a community or something to support them. But yeah, that was just where my mind wandered basically. Did anybody else have any other ideas?
Are the disgraced royalty disgraced from the society's perspective or from the magic's perspective? Because I'm starting to wonder if it's the latter, the harbingers broke away from some sort of interest, some sort of stellar compact, and have sort of been taking over the world and gaining ascendancy. And then our magical origin is basically trying to reassert balance and pull the reins of the world away from the disgraced royalty.
I can see that in a sense, like, oh, they may be disgraced because it's like perhaps they were corrupted or leading towards almost like a magical oligarchy in a sense. And so essentially our characters might be in a position where they're trying to prevent them from trying to reestablish themselves in such a way. Basically to assert or reassert balance, as Will was describing.
Or there's the other factor that they're disgraced too, because these royalty may or may not in the past, before maybe they became this twisted reality and reflection. Maybe in the past we had these royalty almost made a decision that destroyed would have destroyed or kind of made something irreparable with the world as a whole.
Oh, as in this mirror realm that they control, and that they're
Yes.
striking from, got kind of jettisoned away from our reality when something really bad happened.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Any thoughts or go ahead.
I was just gonna say, does that give us enough to kind of work with to start putting together character ideas and roles, or do we need to really hammer it down?
How about this? We have a problem where our society is pretty dystopic, and we're going to be fighting against both it and the abyss. What if our magical origin, whether it be reincarnations of interstellar royalty or embodiments of the stars, backed away from the world after some kind of calamity which created the abyss? And they've realized that they backed out too far, and the abyss is taking over because the abyss never agreed to back off. And so they are reestablishing themselves in us to try and fix things. If they're reincarnations of interstellar royalty, then maybe many of them died in the calamity that created the abyss. If they're embodiments of the stars, then they became very distant for generations and are now trying to reassert themselves.
Like, I like all the ideas. I guess the bigger question is kind of does anybody have a real leaning, I guess? Because like I've liked all the kind of things that we've thrown out there with each of these magical origins, and I feel like we definitely want to kind of figure the magical origin before we figure out the roles. Just from all our discussions, are we leaning in any particular form anyone for anybody? Because once again, I'm pretty open to all of these.
if we like this idea of there being having been a calamity well in the past that separated kind of all of the factions and left the mundane world alone, and then the abyss never really went too far and is really corrupting and creeping in now. And the magical girls are a force that has returning to whomever the characters themselves are. It's, however that works. I do like the imagery of them being embodiments of the stars, and the stars maybe not in the past not being so distant as they are now. That sounds poetic to me. I enjoy that.
Yeah, I'm really digging that actually.
Yeah.
All right. So our next job is to choose what roles we want to play. So each of your characters, and these are evocative state, titles or whatever, but you can interpret them broadly how you will. It might also be helpful to know that the game expects us, like if this was a show of some kind of magical girl TV series, that we start in season 2. So all of the characters have already met each other, established. The enemy, to some extent or another, has already been established. So there's a background that we can work from. So we don't have to start at, season 1, episode 1, where we don't know anything. We're slowly discovering it. Instead, we're starting at season 2, episode 1, where a lot of things have, been put in place, so we can kind of jump into the middle of it.
And I'm assuming, so these roles here, it's like these are like for each individual character player. So we want probably one person fitting each of a role and not having any overlaps, correct?
It doesn't give any specifications as to how many, like if you can have replicates. So I think it's up to us and how we decide to work it. If everybody's a royal heir, that might mean something interesting. I'm not sure.
Well, I guess it also, could be something to kind of figure out how we want to do things with the dynamic. Like, are we wanting kind of everybody to have something that's different for each, so that we have like a mishmash of like, I guess you could say different types of people, different viewpoints and roles? Or how's everybody kind of looking at the rules, and what are they feeling, I guess, on that? I have no preference either on. I already have a few that I'm already leaning towards from my character, if I were to choose any.
I feel like this is just a proxy for what playbooks do you want to play.
Yeah, and that's what
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, that was one thing I was kind of thinking. I'm like, it almost feels like to help like facilitate a little bit of your role too, like it'd be helpful to also know, I guess, your playbook almost in a way, just because they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, so that's kind of the gist or the idea here that it spells out, is that it asks you to choose a role, and then immediately after that we go and we choose playbooks based on whatever role you found to be like evocative or that inspired you. But we can certainly do that in back and forth, multiple directions. Start with playbooks if we feel like that's more accessible.
Well, I'm open to however people want to do it, and if we're kind of already we're touching on like the playbooks, if I remember right, playbooks though are ones where you definitely want to have only one person per playbook, correct? And
Yes.
so it could also help kind of seeing also what playbooks people have been contemplating, because I know I've looked at the playbooks and already have a few ones that I'm leaning towards, but kind of seeing what everybody else is also leaning towards and kind of what they are kind of wanting to do with their character.
So shall we start talking about roles we're leaning toward then?
Sounds good. Looks like you posted a list, Will.
Yep. As far as playbooks, I should probably not play the Stranger because I have already played the Stranger, but everything else I'm still trying to figure out.
I do have little 1-2 sentence descriptions of each of the playbooks if anybody wants me to read that out loud.
That might be a good idea.
Sure. So on the playbooks tab, you can follow along as well. So the Enigma is a mysterious ally and dramatic hero. The Enigma is good at working from the shadows and dramatic revelation. Play an Enigma if you like to be the center of attention. The Enigma shtick is that they have they're kind of like Tuxedo Mask. So they have like a mundane persona, and then nobody really knows who this magical girl is until it's revealed sometime during play, who this alter ego is that comes and helps you every once in a while. Then we have the Guardian, a vigilant protector and patient healer. The Guardian is good at protecting others and caring for their friends. Play a Guardian if you want to make a statement about what is right. They have a kind of a primary mechanic about the vows they've taken and what they can and cannot do. The Harmony is 2 voices speaking as one, a beacon of hope. The Harmony is good at understanding emotions and acting in concert with their allies. Play the Harmony if you want to inspire others. They're 2 souls in one, or 2 people. Maybe you want to play twins and you just run a single playbook. It's kind of open to interpretation what that looks like. The Outsider, a renegade with a troubled past and something to prove. The Outsider is good at direct confrontation, a brash, reckless action. Play the Outsider if you like conflict. The Outsider chooses another player character, another protagonist to be their rival. And they get certain benefits and minuses depending on what they and their rival are up to. The Stranger, a cold and distant luminary. The Stranger is good at calm evaluation and unconventional approaches. Play the Stranger if you want to know how things work. The Stranger is a little bit of a loner archetype. There's some things they cannot do with like bonding with other players, or other player characters, other protagonists. But they get different benefits instead. Like they're really good at doing a lot of projects. The Time Traveler, a secret oracle and dedicated friend. The Time Traveler is good at using flashbacks and prophesying outcomes. Play the Time Traveler if you want to have your own secret agenda. And the Time Traveler chooses an individual that they're here protecting because they've seen a horrible fate that befalls them. And then the Unlikely Hero, an unproven prospect and heartfelt companion. The Unlikely Hero is good at making friends and getting in over their head. Play the Unlikely Hero if you want to be the heart of the group. The Unlikely Hero does not start off as a magical girl. They start off as a person with magical girl potential. And then when things get dire, they gain their magical powers and come to the aid. Kind of like the heart of the group. Very big protagonist energy on that one. And that's all of them. Clarice, you said you had a list of you were looking at for as far as roles go and playbooks too?
Well, with the playbooks, I already have like ones that I've already kind of picked about 3, like just mentally the top 3 based on whatever other people went with. I would just kind of go from there of which one was still left available. Kind of just going from there, just seeing which ones I liked. So I could have already figured out a character for each.
Okay.
For roles, something like royal heir or demanding mentor, maybe someone who has just a little bit of authority. And probably also some like responsibilities connected to them. I want to have someone who is sort of like got some duties that they are responsible for fulfilling, and then they're kind of torn in 2 different directions between maybe competing interests.
Philly, is there any roles in particular you're feeling? Because it looks like they have will put their list, and you know what David's two they're leaning on. Any that you're feeling?
As far as roles go, I think I'm between Royal Heir or probably a Disowned Heir at that. Forgotten Child and Fledgling Mystic, I think, are probably what I'm between.
Well, does anyone want to just kind of make a solid decision on one, and then we kind of just go down the list of whoever wants to something?
Fumi, you and me both mentioned errors. Do you want to take dibs on something error related? I'm happy to give you first right of refusal to that if you'd like.
I'll see. I feel like we both could probably even play that if we wanted, because I am also open to basically playing like a role. It's like a former heir, basically one that's been disowned or disavowed from. It's like the um line of inheritance, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And so, depending on your choice in playbooks, we could also easily play off of that.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'll be the first to kind of make a decision here. I'll go with the Forgotten Child, since that seems to be the only one who had like any kind of interest in that. Otherwise, was Fumi.
Did you have a like particular playbook in mind for that? So like to go with that?
It kind of fits with all three. It fits with all three for me. So really, that doesn't narrow the playbook for me. It just works with all three playbooks I had in mind.
Did you have any? It's like, or I guess for you, it's like, did you have any thoughts, or were you able to? It's like narrow your considerations or anything well?
I think that I am bouncing between Loyal Knight, which I'm assuming would be Guardian, and Enemy Turned Friend, which I'm assuming would be Outsider. I'm really hoping somebody plays Harmony. I don't know what that looks like in the setting, but that is a cool playbook. I don't think I'm quite up for it right now, though. Um, I guess I would also shortlist Enigma as a distant third, but I'm mainly bouncing between Guardian and Outsider.
Just to make sure that I'm following our thought process here, because the text kind of feels open-ended to me. For the role, are we thinking that these are the characters' positions in the mundane society, the mundane world?
I think that's kind of I feel like that kind of helps give kind of maybe some direction of how to choose it. So and that's kind of how I think I'm kind of approaching it.
Okay.
For my part, I would go with either Guardian or Time Traveler, I think.
I think for me, I'm between Stranger and Harmony, which are like complete opposite playbooks to bounce between, but
Yeah, and mine are my three that I had was Unlikely Hero, Harmony, and time traveler. Those were my 3 that I was going for. So.
I didn't catch it at the time, or maybe we didn't specify. I remember David and Fumi, you were talking back and forth about the potential of who might want to be a royal heir. Did we make a decision on that, or I just didn't happen to write it down if we did?
I don't think we did come to a final call on it. I'll throw my lot in with royal heir for now, and if it doesn't make sense for us both to be occupying that niche, then I can always change. I'm happy to do that.
It does say choose 1 or 2 roles for your protagonist, so.
It's true. Well,
I will take Loyal Knight and Enemy Turned Friend, where Loyal Knight is probably the secondary, like Enemy Turned Friend splashing Loyal Knight, and I will claim Outsider, the playbook.
nice. So at the moment, it instructs us to, once we decided on a role and chosen a playbook, to just go ahead and put in, the player name and then the role in that particular playbook, and then we flesh them out after we finish off the playset creation.
So does Fumi or David have any playbook that they just kind of want to kind of lock in and kind of go from there, and then we kind of just, I guess, kind of move forward down the list there?
Well, Fumi and I both had different playbooks we were looking at. So I'm trying to remember. Will, what did you say you were taking?
I'm taking Outsider, Enemy Turned Friend, Enemy Turned Friend / Loyal Knight.
Okay. Got it. If no one's inclined to take Guardian, I might do that. Yeah, I'm thinking Guardian if that's not something anyone else has mentioned. Because I know, Will, you mentioned it, but you took Outsider.
Yeah, I have no qualms with that. And it looks like Clarice is fine with it too, so.
I think Fumi and Clarice, the only ones you both were looking at was the harmony. The rest were different.
Yeah, I think I'll go with Royal Heir, or more so Disowned Heir and Forgotten Child. And then I think I'll go with the Harmony.
And yeah, with that being said, I will do the Forgotten Child and a loyal knight with Unlikely Hero.
Nice. Excellent. Okay. Cool. All right. So yeah, so if you just want to find that playbook and put in your name and then fill in the role, and then we'll jump back to the series tab. I'll close off the ones we're not using. Nobody grabbed the stranger, I don't think. Outsider, Harmony, Unlikely Hero, Guardian. Sweet. All right, so the next thing it asks us to choose is what is our shared obligation? So I had mentioned previously that there's a whole phase of the game where we get to see the characters doing the drudgery of what takes up most of their time. We don't spend too much time on it during play, but we definitely get to see it on screen. The options it gives us are high school, day job, temple, royal court, summer camp, and family expectations.
Honestly, all these kind of have a different potentials depending on how we're looking at the setting. Like I could see where royal court fits in here depending on how we were taking the setting. There could be the simple thing of a family expectations or high school. I'm kind of like open to all these. They all kind of, it's more of just, I guess, whatever kind of backdrop we are kind of focusing in on, I guess, for the characters and all. I have no preference myself.
When I like family expectations, but I like it in the context of families contributing to society events. Like if the families are noble houses, or if the community, if families are expected to come together in the community to manage events or to take care of things, then those are the roles in which we're being thrown together.
Like I hadn't thought of that, but I like the idea.
I feel like high school is a sort of a fallback option. Like if we get really jammed on this, we can always go with high school.
I mean, when it comes to magical girls, a high school tends to be a pretty safe bet usually.
Right. So if I heard that right, family expectations by way of the family sends you all out, or however your particular relationship with your family works, sends you out to do service among the community. And if you're perhaps a royal heir or something, then that might look like putting on dinners or what have you. Is that what you were? Did I hear that right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Or like planning parties or rallies or parades, or like, I guess if our families are all sort of contributing us to some kind of project, maybe there's like a giant Eurovision community show or something like that. Or a big festival.
Does anybody feel strongly against that idea?
Yeah. I think it's it's got a lot of room for creativity with it, whereas some of these are kind of more tried and true, like high school, for example. So yeah, I'm cool with it.
Fumi? Okay, excellent. So we'll go with that. Next is the hideout. So if you scroll up to the top, we have a bunch of these little boxes that are the hideout. So hideout. In this series, the protagonists have a hideout. The hideout is a secret place that they alone can access, and which they expand and improve during play. The hideout is divided into different rooms, which each provide a unique advantage to the protagonists once the room is unlocked. The hideout is the one place the protagonists can truly call their own. It is connected to the same magical origin as their transcended selves and should reflect similar themes as those deeper identities. So we start off with just the basic hideout option, and later through play, we can grab additional rooms and unlock them and the abilities that they grant. So the options it gives us, the prompts are an ancient temple, a majestic castle, a star chamber, an overlooked place, or place between worlds.
Part of me is just when I was looking at all these that I was kind of partial to personally when I was looking at it was a place between worlds in a sense of like it's almost that sense of escapism from this area. Is a place where you can where they may have just somehow stumbled on, and that's part of how they are able to kind of establish themselves differently from this community because they have that segregation from community and they talk with each other, and that's kind of how they have developed as they are within this community and separating out from the standard tradition and such.
I do like that, especially because we all seem to really enjoy the idea of a magical world hidden within the mundane. We ended up going with embodiments of the stars. This would be another great way to bring those ideas back in. Absolutely.
What does this place between worlds look like?
That one, I have no idea. I feel like that could be its own way of something that could even be discussed amongst us of like, oh, I mean, a place between worlds can mean so many different things. It could be you walk into a room that's just almost feels like a galaxy in a sense. It could be something as simple as this disembodied parlor that just seems like a normal everyday like thing in your world, but it's completely disembodied, not connected to the world that you're from. Things like that. Like it could honestly kind of could be whatever kind of flavor we would want it that would also fit with the group as a whole, I feel. Almost the thing could almost embody the group's shared dynamic slash personality in a way if you look at it.
Yeah, space in between worlds makes me think of like a I'm trying to remember what it was called in Persona, like the Velvet Room or something like
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah, you could also look at like the Velvet Room there. There's I'm forgetting right now, but there's a specific magical girl world where they did actually have like a completely separated room from everything where they would talk with each other and have almost monologues in this area completely separated from the world. Um, and that was kind of like also another thought. But Velvet Room is also a very good way of like looking at it too, I think.
So I'm not familiar with the persona, so I'm looking this up. The description is a room located between conscious and unconscious.
Yeah, I think that's how the best way to put that for the Velvet Room. And I think that's also kind of uh, how some magical girls do worlds have it, where with a place between worlds is sometimes they go to sleep and they enter into this kind of separated room or place that's separate, that they can kind of openly talk to each other, that's completely separated out from things. So there's there's also that conscious and subconscious thing you could also play out there. Or you have the other way where it's you're walking and then you just kind of find almost like a opening in you kind of almost glitch out into this little like space outside of your world. Like, oh, if I touch this tree in this way, I suddenly just fall through it. So kind of however we would like want to even discuss how we would get to our hideout too. Like that'd be its own fun with the place between worlds, is it has a different dynamics of how we would maybe even access it.
I my brain is fixating on the idea of clipping out of bounds into the skybox. So you accidentally find yourself outside the level, and all around you is the stars, and the world is sort of out of phase with you, but you can step back into it at some point.
Do you have any ideas for me?
No, it sounds good to me so far.
Okay.
I guess that does sort of imply though that it's like I suppose with sufficient like emotional stress or turmoil, you probably struggle to actually access your hideout somehow.
I can see that if you don't have if you're too stressed to pull off the glitch successfully, you might get stuck on one side or the other.
Is this resonating with you, David, so far?
Yeah, this all sounds good so far. I'm just thinking about what we want to do for rooms more than anything.
Oh, okay, fair.
Yeah.
So a place between worlds. So then, yeah. So, the questions. So we are supposed to unlock a room, and it has to be adjacent to the hideout. So it has to be connected by a little hallway. And we are also supposed to answer.
In this,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
We're supposed to answer how did we find it and what ritual grants us access to it.
And I'm assuming we go on the track, so the only two options we have right now is practice room and lounge, correct?
That is correct. And lounge. So everybody, when it comes to the downtime phase, you each get 2 downtime activities. So if you spend 1 to train in the lounge, then you add 2 XP to Moon, rather than 1 XP. And the practice room, okay, so that's, I guess, just hanging out in the lounge. In the practice room, when you practice, you basically do the same thing, but instead of adding 1 XP to Sun, you add 2 XP.
And okay, what's the difference between the sun and moon thing here? Because that is different to me.
Absolutely. Let me even just put that in the playbooks. So these are your attributes. And so when something bad happens to your character and you're like, oh no, my character doesn't want that to happen to them, or you don't want that to happen to your character, then you make a roll based on your attribute score. It's almost like a saving throw in a way. And depending on, how much you roll, depends on how much stress you take. And so sun, moon, and stars are based on different types of negative effects that are happening to you. So as to which one you would roll. So for sun, it says use sun to resist consequences from violence and fear. For moon, it's use moon to resist consequences from despair and heartbreak. And stars, use stars to resist consequences from panic and social pressure. And so when you gain XP in each of these individually, once you hit 6 XP in one, then you can add an additional box to one of the scores, one of the actions below it. So, for example, if you ended up getting 6 XP in Sun, then you can increment up either Defy, Empathize, or Express. And those are the primary actions you'll be doing, you'll be rolling with, to make proactive effects in the world. Action rolls.
Well, and one thing I am seeing is if we go to the lounge, then there's only one way it goes, which is to the library, unless we went back and did the practice room. So I guess it kind of comes down to also, I guess, where we want to kind of plot out our rooms a little bit, I guess, in thought. Like, sure, you get the 2 XP for Moon and Star, which would help potentially with 2 of the 3 kind of things there. But then there's the fact that if you go to the practice room, we can start going towards some of the other things that deviate from those. So I guess, does anyone have any kind of thoughts, preferences on, I guess, what we may consider as a pathing in a way with our room building?
Yeah.
So like I know my character would lean towards the practice room first over
Mhm,
the
yeah.
lounge.
Yeah, I think so.
Makes sense. I'm just wondering if there's something down the railroad like containment or vault or power source that we want to be building towards, but practice room is in the direction of all of those.
Yeah, and looking at it, aside from my character, everybody else has something that's connected with the sun based on your guys' playbooks. So I think sun makes the most kind of sensical start, I think.
If I was the protagonist, I would also choose the practice room because I'd be like, that's closer to the rest of the options rather than just 2.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was kind of leaning towards.
Yeah, I'm just going based off my character, where my character would be like, yeah, I'd vote for the practice room.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay, so again, we're at the hour. Is everybody good with a 5-minute break this time, or do we need
Yep.
longer?
That
Yeah,
works for
I'm
me.
All right, yeah, and then we'll come back and answer the hideout and make some protagonists. All right. We have a little less than an hour. We still have quite a bit to get through. I just want to take a poll on how comfortable we are with, if anything we don't finish today, we just pick up next time, or if we want to try to troubleshoot that. Either way.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I can, if there's anything that you can do solo, I can do that between sessions too.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm flexible.
Okay. So it does ask in the hideout, how did we find it and what ritual grants us access to it? We probably, those things probably happened back during season 1. It sounded like, from what I was hearing, that there's some kind of emotional resonance you need to be able to access it. And when that is out of sorts, then you're barred from entry.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Sure.
Yeah, either barred for entry or maybe if the skybox, so to say, is supposed to represent like our individuality, it probably also goes to say that it is in some way expressive of our mental state. So if we are mentally unwell for some reason, that's probably also reflected in our respective skybox.
Yeah. So riffing off of that, what if you're not in their most correct emotional resonance, not that you can't gain access, it's that kind of like you were describing it, it may not respond to you the same way you had hoped it would.
Yeah, and then there's also
sure.
the possibility that it let you enter into this kind of space, but because of your indecision, your conflicting emotions and such, you're walking basically into like this almost like void, unable to find where you're trying to go to exactly, because it's almost a sense of you being lost and unable to find that place that you normally can find when you're in your right mind space.
So many good scenes I just see in an anime show based on this. Is great. Transcendence. So this is what happens when you transform. So when you do your magical girl transformation, we call it transcendence. So what does it feel like to transcend?
I almost want to say, if we're going to kind of keep with a little bit of like our themes here so far with like the emotions and all that stuff, I almost want to say it's like almost like that sense of your sense of self and emotion kind of flowing through you and outward into the world in a way, is kind of part of my initial thoughts. What does anybody else have on that?
Yeah, I like that. Kind of along the same lines, I was thinking, maybe if we're playing up emotion, it intensifies whatever emotion you're already experiencing, be it a positive or a negative one. And if we're in a setting where emotion is generally considered to be undesirable, then by definition, that would mean that transcending is kind of an inherently rebellious act.
Yeah, and like I like that. That was one thing I was thinking too. Is if you're in a very bad headspace and in emotions, then I could see that adversely affecting kind of how you transcend and how you kind of enter into your magical girl form and such.
What I love.
Oh, go on. Sorry, go for it.
I was gonna say, what I love about that is it resonates with me, like to the hideout, like that changes form and shape depending on your emotional state. And then also, if that's sort of similar what we get here with transcendence, we get lots of different outfits you each could have, which sounds amazing.
Oh, it's true.
I didn't even think about that
I have
part.
my, I
I
have my
mean, makes
angry
sense.
outfit and my
My angry outfit.
and my yeah.
Sort of like my angry eyebrows. One second, I gotta put those on.
We have a lot of touchstones in light and shadow and color, which makes me imagine that our magical girl transformations are I imagine like wrapping yourself in starlight or something. So you feel armored, you feel warm, you feel expressive. You are glowing, you have an aura.
And vice versa. If it's in a negative sense, you could also take that from a star sense of like almost like a black hole or things where it kind of the sense of kind of color or light kind of pull back inward to yourself instead of outward, kind of constraining on yourself.
I do think it should be very bright, regardless of how it feels. I know that might be a separate topic, but
Yeah, no, I like that.
a lot of light involved if we're going with the light versus dark, starlight kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense to me, especially especially when we're in our top form and everything like that. I feel like we should feel bright and confident, and that sense of being that shining light in a way, in amongst this dark and monochrome.
Mm-hmm.
Before I start writing anything, I want to make sure, Fumi, if you have anything, or if this is good with you and you're enjoying it.
Yeah, I have no objections.
Also, I love what you wrote. That's amazing. Yes, that absolutely 100%. I don't know which one to wear. Okay, so it sounded like raw emotional expression is what it feels like to transcend, and then the aspect is shared is light.
Yeah. I like the idea that transcending is not always a wise idea. Because if it puts you into a very impulsive emotional headspace and intensifies an already fairly dysregulated emotional state, transcending might actually
Make you reckless.
Cause you to do dumb things.
Yeah.
Which I think is important, because otherwise you're going to run
And-
into the problem of why not transcend every time you have the chance.
Yeah, and then you have the other factor of like, because your emotional headspace kind of is in this transcendence. It also affects the group in seeing that reflected in your transcendence, and seeing how you act in like a sense of like how you're even using your magical powers and everything. It also creates that dynamic and concern within the group with seeing how your girl is acting.
Mm-hmm.
What is different for each of you? Like, or just like concept, like generally, what so we know it's raw emotional expression intensified, and then that you wrap yourselves in starlight, take on your armor or forms, whatever. But what's the part that's different?
Okay, so kind of like how maybe how it's kind of got an individualistic kind of expression or feel to us when we do it. Okay. Well, kind of, at least for me, I think mine would, just because of how I intend to play the unlikely hero and everything, is mine would kind of be more of the reflection of kind of my sense of connection and kind of feeling of importance to my friends and those I'm ultimately trying to cheer on and everything whenever I do actually become a magical girl and everything. Is mine's kind of more of that raw kind of friendship and connection I have with everybody else, and why I even eventually kind of figure out my own transcendence, I feel. So kind of a little expression of almost my general friendship with everybody as a whole.
So it sounds like, based on that, the difference might be how the forms that you transcend to express your individual position, like within the context of
the group, or more of like how my character, I guess, feels. Like, for instance, I might feel like a absolute burden to everybody, in which case that would reflect in how my transcendence feels, versus I feel like I'm actually there and I can be that saving person in the moment that finally, or whatever, that anything where it kind of feels based on my character's connection with everybody at that time.
Okay.
In season 1, when I was introduced, I was a shadow. I was basically a null figure wrapped in shadow. I was shadow wrapped in the form of a girl. But now when I am transcended, I have the shadow is still wrapped around me, but it is torn. It's in tatters. There are cracks in it, and the light of my whatever emotional state my character is in is burning through it. She basically seized. At one point, she was empowered by the abyss, but the strength of her emotions asserted itself over that power, and she's basically, I guess at this point, she's holding on to borrowed slash stolen power. So it's a bit tattered. It's no longer as encompassing as it used to be. And the places where it is burned away or torn away or cracked is where her personal emotions are shining through.
I like that.
Hmm.
David, Fumi, do you have any thoughts?
For my own character, the short answer is no. But I'm trying to think of what might make them stand out.
Okay. No, that's fine. Fumi, do you have anything?
I'm still mulling it over. I have a general form of my character concept, and so I'm just trying to refine the details at this point.
Okay. So I wrote this down, expression of individuality within the group. 'Cause it seems like it's an individual thing, but it's also within the context of how you're feeling with the group, sort of. I think that captures what we're saying. So the next question is, your transcendence is an expression of your truest self. How? I think everything we've talked about is just basically
Yeah.
answering this question. We can definitely add something else if somebody feels like it's like an important thing we haven't captured yet. Otherwise, I'm happy to move on to the next one.
I feel like that's already pretty like fitting with everything we've been kind of discussing so far.
All right. So the next thing it asks is our transgressions. How do we transgress against that which is sacred? And how do we represent that which is profane? So for what is sacred, we decided the answers were tradition and edifices, which was all about conformity and symbols and patterns and beauty, and conforming to those and the requirements placed upon people and families by these houses that are symbols of authority that rule over the mundane world.
I think and this is just speaking for my character, I don't know how the others would express it, but basically like my character is a harmony. I think uh basically as a harmony kind of contends between trying to it's like even if they're disowned or whatnot and everything really tries to contend with withholding tradition of their it's like royal house, but at the same time it's like also trying to help the community, so to speak. So I think one of their it's like probably one of their biggest expressions of transgressing essentially is uh in a way probably like helping the community, but basically under their family name, which probably wouldn't go very well with the royal house and everything because they would hate to be associated with that, I imagine.
Yeah, so it sounds like, because we've definitely been talking about this, and you've definitely hit on it here, is about the communities that aren't necessarily the ones that are part of the normal structure, and creating those and working within those and supporting those. And then also individuality, which I think you grabbed on really, really well here with like family name versus the house name. It's like, no, we're individuals here and we're supporting each other and supporting these communities regardless of what you think.
And I feel like probably to really tie that, they also it's like they still wear like probably their house crest, which is especially offensive to it's like that house.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just mostly speaking for my character. It's like, what about the rest of you?
I mean, I think for my character, it's going to be kind of the factor of like, once again, it's that thing of like trying to just break away from that tradition. So anything to them that kind of speaks of like, oh, I'm doing this not because I want to do it, but because society is telling me to do it, they're naturally going to deviate. So it's kind of that thing of whatever fits their sense of self, they want to pursue. And that may or may not really fit within the mold of expectation. And so that thing of like, based on whatever the expectations are of them, they're, and if it doesn't align, they're going to naturally do it just in spite of everybody, and may or may not deal with the consequences of that, but they are kind of unabashedly willing to say, I want to be me and not this greater whole. I want to be myself.
Nice.
Also, the thought of like, that thing of like, oh, as a group, uh, I could also see where, at least for my character, supporting their fellow magical girls because of their friendship, and being like, even though they may be doing something that outright just transgress, they're encouraging and cheering them on this, which in its own right is not going to make anybody happy because I'm encouraging clearly deviance from the expected norms.
I like that in the sense, especially in the sense of like, all right, so they have a lot of symbology and edifices, and you are making yourself an edifice against the norm. Like it's as a symbol and representative of like, follow this instead.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's kind of what I was leaning towards along the same lines. Like, I feel like we represent some ideals that are kind of out of vogue in this society. And so, we're upholding these very kind of grand, idealistic virtues. And that is probably a transgression here.
And that thing of like being the voice for those who are too at this point feels like if they speak their voice, their thoughts, their own individuality, they're too afraid to. But we are encouraging and being that people who say, don't be afraid. Say your inner thoughts, show your inner self, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. Is there anything you wanted to add to this, Will?
No, I think this is really solid. I think it's tying into where I think my character is.
Excellent. So let's see here. How do we represent that which is profane, and profane was all about emotion and community, which I feel like we just kind of answered as part of both.
Yeah, I kind of feel like by talking about both, we've kind of inadvertently talked about transgression, we've inadvertently talked about the profane, because they're ultimately, in this situation, pretty tied together at this point.
Yeah. Is there anything anybody would want to add in this particular section that we didn't capture yet? Okay, so what is our magical girl's ultimate destiny? What are they striving for?
Well, considering our transgression and this overall arching thing, I'm assuming part of our destiny is to bring out everybody's ability to self-express, to break away from tradition, and to be themselves and no longer be part of this expected greater whole, in a sense. It's at least what I'm kind of getting from our overall theme so far. Sounds like kind of where we're headed as a group.
Trying to bend the arc of the world back into a riot of colors direction. If defeating the abyss means making the world look less like the abyss.
Guess in a way also with that emotion and stuff and individualism is also encouraging people to, I guess, in a way, follow their dream in a sense, because that's what we're doing in a way, is following our sense of our dream, our ultimate want for ourselves. And so something like along that lines even.
Let me think here. Now, yeah, I'm looking back at our origin. I feel like it's kind of like something that I would want to incorporate into our final goal here.
Yeah, with the embodiment of the stars.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's maybe some kind of ideal that they represent or something along those lines that I'm trying to, at least my character trying to bring back.
Yeah. And
Something like that.
it also kind of depends on how we want to view the stars too, because if you think about leading somebody to the dream, you could also kind of see that as like the northern star in a sense, guiding you in the right direction and such.
That's really nice.
Any ideas, Fumi?
No, it all sounds good to me so far.
Cool, cool. If anything comes to you, David, we can always definitely add it. What calamity do we seek to prevent?
I think from what it sounds like, we're ultimately, from what I'm hearing is we want to keep things colorful. We want to prevent people from kind of being just this monotone and kind of nobody is different from each other, and that sense of breaking. We're trying to prevent people from being forever trapped in this sense of if it's not what the community wants, then I can't want it. So I think it's that kind of thing of trying to avoid people from being lost forever into this monotonous kind of conformity. Which I guess also ties into the fact that ultimately, as like Will said, we're trying to prevent us from becoming that twisted, a, reflection of reality and that emptiness.
Speak of, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
No, it's like I'm just being reminded with like colors and monochrome and everything. I'm reminded of like a certain lore for a type of gnome where it's like if they ever basically like um it's like lose their it's like excitement or ability to express and everything, basically the color drains out of them and they become all monotonous and it's like monochromatic and everything, and it's like and in a way makes it kind of it's like makes color kind of symbolic to like the will to express and embrace oneself, whereas it's like and so the idea of like the color being drained from them and everything is like seems kind of metaphorical to it's like them losing the will to like challenge status quo, and it's like uh it's like embrace like their personal freedoms and things of like.
I feel like a society that literally has no subcultures, has no countercultures, has no deviation off of the dominant culture is effectively a monoculture, and it's very flat. I mean, not
Yeah.
only is it very fragile, but it's it's almost unrealistically flat. It
Yeah.
feels kind of like Camazotz from A Wrinkle in Time. Like at some point you just sort of slip into a robotic, everything is under central control
Mm.
And I'm kind of
parody of
thinking
a world.
I'm kind of thinking like, it's like stagnation, that almost sense of like uh we're we're on a river. What we want is kind of almost like a flowing river in a way, but instead we have this stagnant pond that can't flow, and for all intents and purposes is lacking that life.
Oh, so like I did have like this one I it's like setting idea that I shelved away sometime and everything, and like considering our mundane world is like a futuristic megacity, and we don't it's like and like we're trying to prevent the world from like essentially losing its color and everything, kind of brings to mind like the idea of like buildings, like corporate buildings of like sterile white, and it's like basically like the things absolutely kind of devoid of it's like personality and everything for the sake of maintaining profession. It's like a look of professionalism, and it's like similar such themes. I think is like what this kind of brings to my mind.
What great change are we destined to bring? This is important because as you work towards your destiny, this thing that you're trying to bring about, parts of the game advance, bring us closer to like the end game of the season.
I guess that's a good question here, because we know we want like kind of a emotion, self-expression, and individuality, but where do we want that to go? Like as a greater picture, what and everything? Because the thought of like, are we trying to, I guess, encourage people to like seek out their dream like job and experiences and such like that, or are we trying to encourage people to uh just say, why follow this tradition when you can there's so many more options to for you to choose in the world, I guess, is the bigger question of how we want to like what's the bigger picture with it all.
You could do a thing where stars aren't even visible in the sky at the start of the season, and by the end we bring stars back.
Oh, I like that.
Oh my gosh, it's so
That
good.
visualness of it all.
Yes. Oh, that ties into something that I wanted to highlight. In my head canon, this may not be the case everywhere in the skybox, but it's definitely the case at our hideout. The nature of the skybox, the nature of of basically the distant all around us outside the space we are in is the stars looking down on us.
And we could also even tie that in there with the with also David's thing, and almost the sense of our hideout. One day, like that hideout where we're at, all those stars that we see, all this unique things that we, this like different little universe that we see, becomes kind of all encompassing around the world, and like lights up that night sky, for instance, with the stars and that universe that we've kind of found in that hideout, as we make people realize more of this world too. You could also almost in a way tie our hideout in to the almost end goal in a way.
Yeah. Like maybe there's like a low level haze or fog or just light pollution in the city. And there's a perfectly mundane explanation for it, but by the end of the season, we're gonna see stars everywhere.
Yeah, and probably like for each person we inspire or it's like assist or rescue or whatnot, and everything is basically symbolized by like another star lighting up in the sky.
I also am thinking like star in the sky, but also I could also see where, and this is kind of like from different tropes, and I think it also happens sometimes in Persona. I forget where I'm getting this from, but that thing of when you inspire or really kind of make a difference in a person, it could also potentially also reflect a little bit in how our rooms even display themselves in our hideout a little bit, like that sense of like things coming kind of coming to life or brightening or something, or some new kind of galaxy kind of additions inside the rooms kind of come alight from just our progress as a whole, like something that our characters can sometimes see as its progress in a way, kind of giving them maybe that little small bit of hope that maybe they're making that difference too.
I like it.
Destined to fill the sky with stars. Very cool. I'm all about this. This is amazing. All right. Let's see what else it says to do next. All right. We did our ultimate destiny. Choose a name for the series that reflects these answers.
Huh. That is a good one. I mean, if we're going to go off of like the star theme, galaxy theme, and emotions and such, Stella just already kind of strikes me as like one of them. Lumina kind of strikes me because of the light, bright. Is any of that standing out to anybody else?
I like Lumina or Illuminate as a component of the title.
Oh, and I just realized you could do, because how you could look at this, it's like, I'm assuming like based on where the lines are in the names, it's like one's a prefix and the other is like the back end, like you were combining these two, I'm assuming.
Oh, the names down here?
Yes, because I see like the little
they're-
dashes.
Oh, I included the dashes just to keep them separated so they're easy to.
Oh, okay. I thought that
but
maybe it
you
was like,
are-
oh, hey.
you are absolutely free to combine these however you will. So this is just a set of names we can use for whatever, for characters, for places, however we want to use it. They're just suggestions.
And you could also go with the silly idea that I just thought, like looking at like Lumina Stella.
Ooh.
But yeah, what does other people think?
Also, are we going for one of these new style anime titles that expresses exactly what the point of the story is?
Like the extraordinarily long ones.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, if we're going with that, oh. word soup there.
I do like what you put in the chat, Will. That sounds nice for sure.
No, that's solid. Yeah.
I don't know if that's the whole. I don't think that's the whole title. I think there's a word or two in front of it and a colon, but that's sort of where my brain was at the moment.
Any ideas, Fumi?
No, I think I'd probably just end up making some terrible pun between languages.
I bet there's nothing wrong with multilingual puns.
Do you want to do the mashup then, where we go like Lumina : 1,000 points of light?
Sure. Yeah.
Great. All right. So let me double check my notes, but I think the next step is to jump into character creation, but we only have 15 minutes left, approximately. So we can definitely jump into that next time. I can talk us through real quick, like the various steps that we're thinking about it in between, if that works for everybody. And then we can do stars and wishes and then close it off.
Sounds fine by me.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, cool. So the list I have here of the next steps are to record your role and background, which you've already done. Detail your obligation. So basically to copy over the obligation that we have here that we've kind of all elected to use as like a ground, but then to specify something about it that's unique to you, or how it what your specific obligation is out of the soup of ideas we came up with. And then after that, assign an action rating. So in your playbooks, you have actions which are defy, empathize, express, confess, forgive, perceive, analyze, conceal, and flow. You'll already have a box checked in 2 of those. Some of them you'll have, it doesn't look like it's in this particular case. Yeah, so you have a box checked in 2 of them, and so then you'll just choose a third. Or you can choose one of the ones you already have a box in, and then just check the next one over. There is a mechanical benefit to making sure you have one checked in each of sun, moon, or stars, but that's up to you. You don't have to do that. You just might get a little more pain, so to speak. Your character might get a little more stressed out is all.
Can you say that one more time? How many checks are we able to assign?
Just one.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. I think in Forge in the Dark, it's quite a few more than just the one.
So a couple of us are in trouble when it comes to spreading the points out.
Yes.
I'm just going to pretend the stars don't exist.
They don't yet. And then you choose one special ability and one transcendent ability. And then we would create secondary characters, which are just characters in the periphery of your character, some characters that mean something to your character, like maybe your mom, your dad, your employer, a principal, something like that. And that's just to create a cast of characters for me to draw from, and then also probably scenes to have while you fulfill your obligation. So we have quite a range we can select from there, just creating as we will, drawing from what we've already done. Then you name your character, introduce your character, and then make promises. And that's a whole thing where you make promises, either explicit or implicit, spoken or not, to other protagonists. And then we wrap up and we end up choosing a series ability and also a transcendent ability on the series playbook. And then after that, we'll be ready to go.
Cool. So is the game plan then to get into gameplay next time, even though we've got a little bit of housekeeping to do first?
I would certainly like to, for sure.
Cool.
It might be a little touch and go since we'll still have some things not quite answered yet. But I think we have enough here that I can definitely think about some things in between sessions. and have a brain full of ideas for the nemesis and whatnot. How's everybody else feel about that?
Yeah, that works for me.
Cool. All right. Excellent. So is everybody familiar with Stars and Wishes?
Yes.
Okay. I'm still relatively new to the open hearth, so I'm like, I could try to explain it. If nobody's familiar, I might butcher it. Anybody like to go first?
I can. As far as stars go, I just like what we have going so far. I especially like the Starlight stuff. Um, I think that's very on point for this style of story. It's very heroic. And bringing back the light. It's very classic. I like it. So I'm looking forward to that and looking forward to seeing everyone's characters. I guess for wishes, I would like to flesh out a little bit about, let me double check the um series sheet here. Yeah, I'd like to flesh out a little bit more concretely what the stars are about. I mean, obviously they're the good guys and the Abyss is the bad guys, but what does the star represent? What good are the stars? Are they, these embodiments of honesty and generosity and mercy, or are they embodiments of justice and righteous anger? You can kind of play different ways with good guy. So I'm just curious as to what that looks like. And I also would like to, as long as we're messing around with light, I keep going back to the idea of having a prism that is either an important MacGuffin or is a piece of someone's gear. But the idea of having some kind of prismatic imagery is something that I am hoping for. I even made a note about it in the bottom of my character keeper column. So those are my stars and wishes.
It's ever and always muted. Um, I think I'd like to second as a star the degree of lore building that we pulled together. I understand we kind of went over time on it, but I really enjoyed the sort of throwing ideas around and finding ways to combine not one, not two, but three items together and sort of shaking them and seeing, where the similarities fall out. Every time we come back around and tie into something that we've already established, it becomes more real, and I think that's really neat. Especially when we came back from the break, Fuma laying out your work so far, your conspiracy board wall that was tying in how the various four magical origins were tying into harbingers in the mundane world. I really appreciated that. From a wishes perspective, what we are doing in society, what we're doing as obligations don't feel entirely real to me yet, and I'm looking forward to seeing what sorts of things we are being pushed by our families to do in sort of the day-to-day life of the world. And I'm looking forward to seeing a couple of establishing scenes next session to sort of see how these characters bounce off of each other and see the world sort of snap to life.
Yeah, it's like I'll go next. In regards to stars, it's pretty much as they say, so I won't it's like repeating all that and everything. I did enjoy all the it's like all the world building and everything and everyone's it's like ideas and how we manage to bring them all together for wishes. Um Yeah, it is pretty similar. It's like I would like to see certain details of it fleshed out, like basically what family expectations mean, especially between since half of our party is noble heirs and the other half of the party is loyal knights, and exactly like how that may play off each other and everything. It's like especially in regards to uh, character connections. And I suppose the only other wish I have it's like at this point is having it's like enough time to actually get into character connections.
Well, start same across the board, so not really anything different to add there. Which is for me, yeah, it's the same as how Fumi put it for me, which is just I want to kind of flesh out more on definitely the interconnection of the characters and everything a little bit more and kind of that side of things. And then generally speaking, would like to know more about the obligations and a little bit more of how this will affect our characters in the kind of grander mixing of within this new world that we've just created.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. I think we hit it pretty good. I really enjoy the imagery that we created here. At one point, I was like, "Oh, the abyss, monochromatic," and "Oh, the mundane houses. They're colorful, but they're very like structured and stuck in what color they can and cannot express." And then like the stars as being a riot of colors and just pure expression. I thought was great. That was amazing. As far as wishes go, it's pretty much what everybody else said here is really see who the characters are and how they connect to each other. I'm really interested in this promise phase and what that means as the characters get entangled in each other. Well, awesome. Unless anybody has anything else, I'm definitely looking forward to next session. This was a lot of fun. I definitely appreciate everybody being here.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks so much.
Take good care, everyone.
Thank you for running
See you all
this.
soon.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks.